Welcome into the Landon Tengwall Show, brought to you by Bobby Rail Honda of State College. You need anything car related, make sure you go there. Tell them Landon sent you. They will take care of you. Terry Smith had his Monday presser today. Early on, talked about the timeout that he took. With 20 seconds left, Penn State gets the first down. Almost everybody in that situation in college football, because the clock stops with first downs, you get up, you spike it, and then it really only takes about a second off the clock. Now, Terry said we felt that we wanted to maximize our plays and that it would take 3 seconds if we were to have spiked it. Overall, I just kind of have to disagree. I think max it takes 2 seconds. I think a lot of times when you get that first down and you get up and spike it and the refs are holding it until they're holding the clock really until you basically get up and you are ready. I think you are looking at 19 seconds left with the timeout. And I think if you're talking about ways to actually maximize those final 3-4 plays, I think the way you best do that is if you have a timeout still in your pocket. You can still throw over the middle of the field, and even right there on that final play or two, you're able to throw something underneath for 7-yard gain, and you can call a timeout, and then you either go for an extra long field goal or you have a more manageable Hail Mary. So I think that's something Penn State needs to continue to look at, specifically with their next head coach, is just clock management and game management as a whole. That's something we've really struggled with in the past with James Franklin, and I thought this was a little bit of a blunder there by Terry Smith. So something that we definitely need to manage and get better at. Now, Terry was asked about having conversations with guys on the team in sense of, are they going to leave? Are they going to stay? He did say, I've talked to some guys, and I think the biggest thing is he's like, we're all in wait and see mode. No one knows if you're going to be here. Now, he did say it depends on the next head coach. What is their offensive scheme? What is their defensive scheme? Is it going to suit me as a player? Those are all things that these guys are looking at with who comes in next. And Terry was even asked for himself. There's been talks about, hey, are you going to, maybe take on some type of GM role, which I don't think actually the GM, because he doesn't have any experience doing that. We're going to have to hire a real GM that has experience being an actual general manager and managing money and agents and all that. But would Terry Smith want to just say the next coach has a DB coach that's coming in with him? If Terry Smith is offered, the ability to be kind of higher management, would he take that? He said, I'm living in the moment. But he said, I will examine any position that gives me the ability to stay at Penn State. And honestly, I've said this multiple times, someone that was just the cornerback coach for 11 years. It wasn't like he has aspirations to be a defensive coordinator or head coach. I mean, I'm not in Terry Smith's head, but that's just kind of what I've inferred by when you just stay at one position at your alma mater for 11 years. I think that's just what he wants to do. He wants to be a ball coach and coach his cornerbacks. But I think anything that will give him a nice position here at Penn State is something that he will want to do. But it really is, that's the hardest part about this season for these guys. I've talked about, I was a part of some tough seasons at Penn State, but at least I knew there was the next season coming. That's why I'm proud of the way that these guys are fighting. And really, since Iowa, they came back and look like full effort. Everybody's in. No one's checked out. And I really appreciate that, because it's not easy when nobody knows what the future holds. Just about everybody's draft stock has went down from where it was at the beginning of the season. So to continue to show up and play with heart, I am very proud of these guys, and the fans too, continuing to show up. I talked about that in my post-game show, but it was loud. A whole crowd had their T-shirts off. That crowd, like the camera, the TV, if you didn't see it, and if you're in the stadium, I'm sure you saw it, it started growing and growing and growing, and more people going to the shirts off crowd, and that type of stuff makes me happy, because we have to continue to support these guys. Now, Terry was asked about throwing the ball down the field, which we obviously just finally started to do in the second half. He said, we just didn't make those calls to throw the ball down the field in earlier games or even in the first half against Indiana. He said we went into halftime and made sure we made those calls. So clearly there was a conversation between Kotelnicki and company at halftime that, hey, it's time to finally do this. We've been saying we're going to do it. Terry Smith said in his Monday presser last week, you can bet your top dollar that we are going to throw the ball down the field, and you still really didn't in the first half. And you come out and you see what happens. Even Ethan Grunkmeyer, first play, takes a shot, wasn't there. He just threw it deep just to kind of throw it, and then he throws a pick. But still comes back, and we continue to stretch the ball down the field, and it opened up so much of the offense. And so I keep going back to, like, I can't believe Drew Aller had to deal with that. An offensive coordinator that basically refused to throw the football down the field. Producer Jesse, who's going to be on the show later this week, he coined it on Twitter, the horizontal air raid, which is, yes, it's kind of funny because that's not an air raid. But we really would only throw the ball short. And so finally, you see what happens when Ethan Grunkemeyer has the ability to kind of open it up and actually throw the football down the field and get some confidence instilled in himself when he's throwing 15, 20-yard completions, which he did like 4 of them yesterday on Saturday. So I think that was fantastic. But when you don't do that, you're putting your offense at a disadvantage, and you're starting to allow the defense to creep into the box and play everything underneath. And that's why the run game started to be successful, because you threw the ball down the field and the safeties had to back up a little bit. So that I think that's something you have to go into next week, Michigan State continuing to do. And Terry Smith said we are going to be very, very aggressive as we move forward. Now, Terry was asked about Ethan Grunkemeyer in his game. Thought it was interesting. He mentioned, great battle, even after the interception, continuing to have no fear. And he said that, he thinks that Grunk is we have our quarterback of the future, is what he said, which I think it's hard. I mean, I love that he said that. You don't really know. And as Terry Smith said earlier in his presser, nobody knows if they're still going to be here. And I think that's going to be interesting to see. Does this next head coach want to keep Ethan Grunkemeyer? Does Ethan Grunkemeyer want to stay here? I do think that's going to be a real conversation of what schemes are you bringing. I think the other piece of it too, no one's talked about this. There's a real possibility for Drew Aller to probably try to get a medical. I know that sounds crazy, and everybody was just like, oh, he's out. He doesn't have any more eligibility. Technically, no. But we've seen how weak, and the NCAA is bending to everything. I think Drew Aller has a real case. So what? Only played 7 games this year, but also his freshman year that he burned his red shirt. He can make the case to the NCAA. I wasn't playing any meaningful snaps. I got a horrific injury to end this year. Does he want to come back? Would he go somewhere else? We're going to cover that next week, so we'll be on top of that. Now, Terry Smith was asked about the defense and how much better they played. And as I told you guys from watching the tape, I took away that it seemed like guys were playing at 100 miles per hour and it was more simplified for them. And he said that. He said, we have simplified the defense. We drew up some more blitz packages, made it easy for them, and guys were playing loose, having fun. And that's what we needed to see. He gave full credit to Jim Knowles. He said Jim Knowles is basically the head coach of the defense. He's not really getting too involved in that. And so I think Knowles did a great job. And I think that's another person that you talk about this next head coach. That's probably their biggest decision that they have to look at. Do I want to keep Jim Knowles? Andy Kotelnicki will not be here. No. Does not need to be. He refuses to try to throw the football down the field. He just can't not run a trick play. He's gone. But do you keep Jim Knowles? You're starting to see some promise. If Jim Knowles' defense is playing great these last 3 games, you're playing back-to-back backup quarterbacks with Michigan State and Nebraska. But I don't know if I see good things. I'd be intrigued to keep Jim Knowles and also not have to pay him $6.4 million to just go sit on a beach somewhere. So I think that's a real conversation and main thing that we are going to be looking at. All right, lastly, Kobe Howard. Terry Smith said he was better than I anticipated, talking about his run blocking, and said that because his run blocking is so good, they feel like they can play him as an every down wide receiver, not just on a third down or, very obvious passing situations. So I think that's great. He said he's going to continue to get more opportunities. He had 22 snaps, 2 targets, 2 receptions. I think you have to continue to get him the ball, get Trevor Pena the ball. Let those 2 guys be your main wide receivers. All right, tonight we have live call-in show, 7:30 p.m. I have Tyler Donahue car ride video this week. We got producer Jesse coming on. A lot of great content. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. But as always, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace.